Today we are going to have a tutorial on how to choose chords and use chord inversions based on a given melody. This is the format you can expect for question 1 in ABRSM's Grade 6 Theory exam. A typical exam question would look like this. Do remember that you have question 1A and 1B in the exam, and you just need to complete either one of them. If you chose 1A, you would be asked to supply Roman numerals or any recognizable systems to indicate chords. If you chose 1B, you would need to use figure-based to indicate chords. We will go through both of these methods using the same example seen here. For both methods, the first step is to always identify the key of the excerpt. Here we have a B flat in the key signature, and the last note of the melody ends with F, 2 points that are indicative of the key F major. Once that has been identified, I recommend beginners to lay out all 7 diatonic chords formed in the key of F major like this in the table. You can see that I categorize my chords as functions rather than writing them according to the sequence. This is useful so that I can replace certain chords according to their function. A good practice is to always include any flats or sharps here so that students are aware of the quality formed by these chords. Chord 4, for example, is a B flat major chord, but without the flat, it would be a B natural diminished triad, a huge difference in sound. You can also see I put chord 3 in brackets because they aren't commonly used to harmonize melodies in a classical piece, so it would be best to avoid them for now. From the table, I can easily choose the chords that match the melodic notes. A can be harmonized with chord 1, while G can be harmonized with chord 5, so on and so forth. But there is a point to be made here. In the exam, when you see an asterisk, that prompts you to supply a chord, while a line will mean that the chord should be sustained on. After this, if you see a new asterisk, a new chord or inversion should be supplied, because if not, why not just extend the length of the line? So in bar 1, this is not correct, as we should not be using the same chords in the same position, and one of the chords here will have to be replaced. But for the rest of the music, we can see that primary chords are sufficient to harmonize the passage here. Basically, all diatonic notes in the melody can be harmonized with only chords 1, 4, and 5. But this wouldn't sound very interesting, as the chords keep repeating themselves and form a very basic, dull chord progression. This is when we can replace some of the chords with secondary chords. For example, I replaced the chord 5 with a chord 2 here, so that we have a different chord. I also replaced the tonic with a chord 6 here to imply an interrupted cadence. Then I replaced chord 4 with a chord 2 here for a more interesting progression near the end. Now we can see that using minor chords to replace primary chords add color to the harmonization. This would already be an improvement from the previous chord progression. Be sure to use uppercase Roman numerals for major chords and lowercase Roman numerals for minor chords. From this example, we also see that the supertonic is commonly used to substitute the subdominant, while the submediant is commonly used to substitute the tonic. This is because they belong to the same functions. You'd also see that chord 7 diminished is not in use because of its quality that is best used with an inversion, so we avoid it for now. Now I've only managed to use some minor chords, but I haven't used any inversions yet. If you look at my bass line with all the chords in root position, it seems to be all over the place, with lots of lips and not enough steps. This is when inversions come in to make the bass line more linear and melody-like. That will make the bass line more enjoyable to the listener as well as the performer. Do note that if you're answering the question using Roman numerals, it is not required for you to provide the bass line. This is for an illustration purpose only. So by using some inversions here, you can immediately see an improvement in the bass line. There's better shape and a sense of direction for it as it descends gradually before approaching a cadence at the end. Also note that I use inversions in the middle of the passage and not at the end. This is because inversions are less stable chords and have a tendency to move forward. That makes it suitable when continuing a phrase, but not at the end of a passage. It is, however, possible to use an inversion to start the music. Near the end, I used a chord 2B. The first inversion is common for the supertonic chord because the bass represents the subdominant note B flat that was previously harmonized as chord 4. I also used first inversion position for chords 4 and 5 in this example. Second inversion chords are uncommon, found only in 1C5 progression or as passing chords. Here you would see a 1C5 progression near the end of the music that helps sustain the bass note C before it resolves to F. While there are multiple approaches to harmonizing a melody, this answer sample here is sufficient and satisfactory for a grade 6 level, as it demonstrates the use of different chords and inversions. Now, if this extract appears in question 1b, then we can also answer it by using a different method. In this case, we need to provide a baseline, which we already have, with figures below it. You can see that previously, all the first inversion chords will now be indicated with a 6, and the 1C5 progression is indicated with 6-4-5-3. Remember that root position chords do not have to be indicated with 5-3 unless they form part of a 1C5 cadence. A bass note without any figures would automatically be considered root position. So the first two chords are understood as chords 1 and 2 in the root position, judging by the bass notes and the lack of figures. Also note that the number 6 is shorthand for 6-3 that indicates a chord in the first inversion. The E note with a 6 in bar 1 is then a chord 5B. The D note with a 6 in bar 2 is then chord 4B, and so on. And as a reminder, the 5-3 at the end is indicated because it is part of a 1C5 progression and is therefore required to clarify the cadence. Hey guys, my name is Kenneth and I help music teachers and students with everything related to ABRSM music theory. If you found my content helpful, hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel so you don't miss out on any of my videos.